You're listening to the Let's Talk Marketing podcast hosted by me, Katya Allison. So, what have you gotten yourself into? In short, it's going to be a good time. We're going to have great conversation, and there's going to be a little bit of learning along the way. Through insightful interviews with top marketers, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders, I explore the latest trends, techniques, and strategies in the world of marketing. I am here to offer you engaging and informative discussions to help you stay up to date on the latest trends and take your marketing skills to the next level. Today, in this episode, we are covering social media strategy with Shayna Macklin. Now, she's an experienced marketer with over 10 years of expertise in social strategy, influencer programming, and branding. She has worked in house and on the agency side of various industries such as entertainment, beauty, and CPG. Recently, she joined the fast fashion brand Rainbow Shops, leading their social strategy rebrand and spearheading their first ever influencer and content creator programs. Today, we're going to roll up our sleeves and talk some social strategy. So let's talk marketing with Shayna Macklin. Shayna, welcome to the Let's Talk Marketing podcast. I am over the moon excited to have you on here.
I
Thank
am
you.
so excited to be here. You know, you are like one of my favorite people in the whole world. So thank you so much
I'll
for
take that. I'll
thank you
take
so
that.
much
And
for the
you
invite.
are one of mine. And then after listening to this episode, everyone will now know why. Now, today we are going to dive into social media strategy, but before we do that, let's get to know you a little bit. So,
Okay.
I'd like to know, what was your first marketing role and what is your current marketing role?
Okay, so at the ripe old age of 27, I decided to get into marketing and I actually took an internship at 27, just started my marketing career and I was doing PR and marketing and some editorial for a magazine in New York. And recently, my current position, what is that, 12 years later, is I'm director of brand strategy and influencer marketing for a fashion company.
Which is huge. I'd love to learn a little bit about what you currently do in your current role. What do you love about what you do? But I also conversely want to know, it's the good and the bad, right? Like what's that one thing that you would pluck out if you could? So first let's start with what you love.
Yeah. So I think, what I love the most about what our industry is about is it's about change, it's about trend, it's about opportunity, it's about getting to experiment with your creativity, right? So,
Yeah.
we can test and learn, we can try all of these amazing things online. Things, again, they just move so quickly. So I feel like, in marketing, when it comes to influencer, when it comes to social, you're not pigeonholed. You can try a million different things.
Yeah.
And, you get to kind of explore different avenues and, find what works for your brand. And, the other thing that I also love is, again, because it's moving so quickly, you can shift strategy at any given time. Right.
Yeah.
So you're just, the possibilities are endless in terms of creativity. I think the one thing that I would remove from it, honestly, is unrealistic expectations of immediate success and growth. I think any good plan takes time, right? And when it's executed properly, it may not be an overnight success. There's a saying that any overnight success had a 10-year ramp up period, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like that can be true when it comes to marketing and brand strategy and brand awareness and influencer programs. It takes time to really build out and learn things. So jumping into it thinking, okay, we're going to do this and it's going to get us X right away is just, I think we need to remove that and lean more into patience, right, with our programs.
Oh, preach, sister, because that is, I think, the bane of any marketer's existence is really balancing out those expectations. Like, this is a really great idea. And I also, and we'll probably get into this too, but I feel like virality nowadays is also kind of blurring the lines even more when it comes to setting up realistic expectations. Virality is amazing, but that that's a peak, right? Like, and
Right.
you have to just be consistent in order to be successful, and you do have to be patient. So I
Yeah.
love that you said it's setting the expectations, because it's so true. And I think anybody who's a marketer that's listening can absolutely like empathize and sympathize with that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, in as you said, this kind of landscape that we're in, it changes so quickly. So I would love to hear from a social network perspective, which ones, if any, do you go to be inspired, entertained, and educated? Do you go to a social network for any of these things?
I do. I am definitely your midnight scroller. Just
Same.
I'm
Same.
I'm the midnight and then the 6 a.m. scroller. So I would say for inspiration, because I am an avid traveler and I love photography, for me, it's going to be Instagram for
Yeah,
inspo. For entertainment, obviously, it's got to be TikTok.
for
Um,
sure.
I love it. And depending on the type of entertainment I'm looking for, it could also potentially be YouTube sometimes. Like for my
Yeah.
travel bloggers who do these 30-minute travel blogs, I'm like, oh, I want to watch, what they did in Guatemala. So I'm going to be on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then for education, it's TikTok. I love TikTok. I really love it. It's an addictive platform, but there's so much that you can get out of it depending on what you're looking for. So I just love it so much.
I feel like it's, hacking what the education out of it, right? Like, the hack is like, because I also, find I don't know that I go to TikTok for education, I definitely go for entertainment, but I do find that sometimes tips come up on, like, my feed, on my For You page, or someone's giving you something that makes you then go down the rabbit hole of, like, "What do they mean by that? Oh, I wanna try this. Let me," and, from a marketing perspective, it's freaking fantastic. Like,
Yeah.
I'm currently on like a on the warpath of hacking, like, Chat GPT to really make it
Oh,
like,
girl,
as a marketer,
you and
how
everybody else. Me
I
too. If
know.
you learn some tips, share them because
I know, but that's what I'm doing. I saw something on TikTok that was like, well, I wanted ChatGPT to be able to come up with responses that were more on my voice and tone. And so I went down like this ChatGPT rabbit hole of like, what are the prompts? How do you get to know that? So like I love that the tips are what drives like the further education as well too. So I love that. I love that. Now, kind of on the other end of the spectrum, how do you stay up to date on trends, or not just necessarily like social media trends, but just trends in marketing to begin with? Is there a newsletter? Are you part of a group? Like, how do you stay up to date?
all of the above and then some. So if you look at any of my email inboxes, and I have like a million of them, you will see marketing newsletters, Substacks, Reddits, podcast episodes. I mean, I'm literally on every possible newsletter sign up. And LinkedIn is amazing. TikTok's
Yeah,
amazing for trends too. So because I love our industry so much. And I think, other marketers listening, you'll agree, we're always learning, right? Like the
yeah.
learning never stops when you're in our industry. So I'm always like, okay, what's new? What's happening? Like, what am I missing out on? Like, what can I educate myself on? And so I'm everywhere all at once.
Everywhere all at once. I think that was a movie. I think it won
It
an
was.
award. Something like
I love
that.
that movie.
Well, then let's talk about kind of that educating part. I've got you on here so that we can talk about social media strategy. Let's start with the basics. As a brand, how do you decide kind of what networks you should tap into? I know that a lot of brands kind of want to be everywhere. I tend to shy away from that as like an advice, but like, what are your thoughts on that?
Same, completely the same. I think when it comes to brand marketing, you have to be selective in where you're going to show up. And
Yeah.
because where you think your consumer might not necessarily be the case. Like for us, Twitter doesn't make sense. For us,
Yeah.
Twitch doesn't make sense. YouTube doesn't, for on the brand side, doesn't make sense. On the influencer side, makes a lot of sense to activate on there, right? So for
Yeah.
us, we're looking at really TikTok and Instagram, Facebook. Those are our main platforms that just make sense for us as a brand.
I love that advice. What are some kind of common mistakes that you've seen happen when it comes to brands being kind of on social media? Is it more of like not sticking to, I don't know, their values and who they are? Is it not posting enough? Like, what are some just kind of common mistakes that you see brands execute on social media?
Honestly, it runs the gamut. I've seen them, yeah, not posting enough. I've seen them over posting. I've seen them not having different, oh, this is the biggest thing, not having different strategies for different platforms.
Oh,
You
yes.
That is like my, oh, just like knife to the heart when I see that, because I'm like, there's so much opportunity to speak and present your brand in a different way on TikTok versus Instagram. And, I sometimes I don't see brands really leaning into that. And, um, I think in the long run, it's detrimental to brand growth and awareness, because when I'm going
Yeah.
to a certain platform, I'm looking for a different experience and I want to get to
Yeah.
know the side of a brand in a different light. So that's definitely the biggest thing. It's just not having different strategies for different platforms.
I love that you said that. I couldn't agree more. A brand taking one video and thinking that they could copy and paste it in every single flat and platform and actually get success or have successful campaigns from that is really going to be falling short on like the success metrics when it comes down to it. Do you
Yeah.
have like some examples of like just kind of like a strategy for Instagram that works versus like TikTok or LinkedIn? I feel like LinkedIn is the real obvious one. You probably wouldn't post a dance on LinkedIn, right?
Right.
Like that's a very obvious example. I mean, as fun as my Wednesday dance was, it probably
You know what?
always made
People would
to the
love
TikTok
to
audience.
see that. I would watch that on LinkedIn. I
I'm
would.
gonna test it out. Watch the comments just go up in a flurry. But, like, do you have examples of that? Like, as far as, like, a solid strategy for Instagram, how does that look different for another platform?
So, I mean, I can speak for us, right? Because every brand's going to
For
have
sure.
their own strategy that works well. So, for us, our Instagram, people love to see, style tips and tricks work really well for us. They love our flat lays; they do really well. They love we have such an inclusive brand. We have junior size, mid size, curve. We have a huge curve community, so we like to highlight our curve community a lot. That content performs really well. And for us too, like we love having like color themes on our grid. And I know that's kind of 2013, but I'm an OG marketer, so
Bring
I
it
do
back,
I
baby.
do loves me a good grid. So, because I'm like, it leads to the whole brand discovery experience, right? If someone is just coming onto my feed for the first time and they're like looking at the profile, they're like, oh, this looks really good. Let me click around and check out the content. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That is a hill I will die on. I still stick to the grid. Um, but so it's more of that beautifully aesthetically pleasing kind of content. Whereas TikTok, we can get a little more messy. We can be a little bit more, risky and kind of fun and let loose a little bit more and entertaining and funny and sassy and bring people into who we are as a brand and just have them get to know us as a personality versus just like, oh, I just go here to shop, but like they're super invested. I think one brand that does really, really great job, actually two brands, Duolingo, which everyone always cites because they're just
Yeah.
amazing on TikTok. And then the Empire State Building is really great.
Wow.
Yes,
I'm
I
gonna have to
love
follow that
them.
now. I'm gonna have to follow.
They're so good. Oh, and Ryanair, forget about it. Forget about it. I'm obsessed. I'm like, we need to go to Europe just so I can book a flight on Ryanair because I really love their brand, just from all the TikToks that I watch that they do. So, I think that is a place to give yourself permission to test and experiment and just be fun and just go for it.
What I appreciate about what you're saying is it's tying the social so much back to your brand and the feel of it. And while it may seem like looking at the grid is an old school tactic, it also speaks to your brand, right? Like you want them to have like that experience. The experience is the full thing, not just a post. And that's very intentional. Whereas for another brand, maybe they don't care, right?
Right.
I've always liked those Instagram posts that are like the top three that are basically like puzzle pieces. It always drives me
Yes.
back to the grid. And if you're gonna be intentional in that way,
Yep.
that grid better look really aesthetic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
That's such a good strategy too. I know a lot of brands used to do that, like, back in the day. Let's bring that back too. Let's bring back
let's
the
bring
grid.
it
Let's
back,
bring
people.
back
Let's
the
bring it
puzzle
back.
pieces.
How creative can you be? But
I
it also it speaks to the fact that you're talking about Instagram being a little bit more polished and TikTok being a little bit more raw. I think of it as like Instagram is like the formal family dinner, and TikTok
Yes.
is like all of spilling tea
Yes.
after the family dinner
Yes.
conversation. Like,
Oh,
let me show
100%.
you what happened at family dinner that you were not aware of.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I love it. And I think too, like, what it comes down to is, and this is tying back into brands, which is, don't activate at 10%, right, with anything that you do. So, and this is a conversation that we're having internally at, where I am now, which is, so we're activating influencer, we're trying to revamp our social, but what else are we doing? Right? We need to revamp the
Yeah.
website a little bit. We need to get involved in experiential. We need to, just start triggering on all these other efforts, because social and influencer is one piece of the puzzle, right? And
Yes.
when you think about your marketing matrix as a whole, it all ties in together. And I think too, laddering back up to the mistake thing, I see brands just not going 100%, right? They're doing a little bit here, a little bit there, but that's also something to keep in mind, is you have to fire at 100 if you're going to go in for it and go all out, right? Because that's
Yeah.
the only way it's really going to work, because then, people will be like, well, what is this brand about? I don't understand. There's like a disconnection between what I'm seeing on social versus what's in the newsletter versus what's on the website versus the influencers that they're working with. So it just, everything kind of has to marry in together.
Yeah, I what you're talking about also, I don't, maybe I'm hungry because all of my analogies are very food focused right now. But I start to think of like, you know how you're well, I'm going to speak to myself. I
Do
like
it.
to shake up like the dinners, right? Because I'm thinking, oh, they're going to be really bored with the same kind of cycle of recipes over a
Yeah.
course of a week. I can't continue to make that, right? My assumption is that they will be bored with it. So I've got to be
Jazz
spicy
it
one
up.
day and Italian and another day and Greek maybe. Probably not Greek. But yeah, I mean like I feel like people think other people want variety, but I think what they want is consistency because that's
Yes.
the feedback that I hear like I
Yes.
don't know, but I really like this recipe. I could eat that every single week. It is much more about the consistency part of it, and you
Yes.
wanna be able to step in everywhere, and I think that's why people have taglines, right? That's why we have taglines.
Yep.
That tagline should be everywhere, but in the way that you're creating the content and the way that you amplify it on the different social platforms, email, website, to your point, is
Yep.
going to be slightly different because it's gonna be
Yes.
slightly different.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, how are you measuring the success of social media then? Because you talked about, executing it, also being patient.
Yep.
So, tell me about, let's talk about success. What should I be looking at? Is it different for all platforms? Is this an overall social media strategy equal success? If what?
So I'm going to approach it from an overall standpoint. And, obviously the goal is always click through to sales, click through, add a cart, add a cart. But I
Yeah.
think, when we look at it on a more like nano level, right, we just kind of really hone in. It's going to be looking at the funnel as a whole. So we have the awareness, we have the intent, consideration, and then the action. So when I look at our socials, depending on what the KPI is for the month or for like a specific post, I generally look at reach, mentions, and shares. So when I
Okay.
say reach, if someone sees it on a platform that they visit, that like TikTok or YouTube or Instagram, and they're just constantly getting seeing my brand, that activates recall, right? If someone's talking about my brand, even
Mhm.
just in that moment, that means I'm top of mind for them. And then if someone is sharing that, that means the content was engaging and relatable enough that they want to share it with a friend because they saw value in that piece of content. So that's why I frame it, that it's the reach, it's the mentions and the shares.
Yeah, I love that. I also think like reach is now we've mentioned so many like kind of quote unquote old school tactics, but like I think, reach is something that like you look at from a billboard perspective, right? Like this is how many eyeballs had the opportunity to see my brand. And there is a ton of value when it comes to that. I am
Yeah.
kind of curious because I think a lot of people have said this that organic social is dead. What are your thoughts on like organic social? And it's almost
Oh,
like they're like, organic social is dead. Why even do it? Which seems like such
so
a bonkers
risky.
idea.
I know. I know, but and it's so I personally I don't think organic social is dead. I think the way people are interacting with organic social is has changed.
Yeah.
And there's more brands, more people on social than ever, and there's more competition out there. And I believe that your organic strategy has to be strong, but you also have to marry that with a strong paid strategy as well to support that. So it's not, taking an ad out on every post or boosting every post or whitelisting everything, but it's testing things out organically to see what does well. And then maybe turning those top performing pieces of content into ads or boosted posts or whitelisting them. I think we can continue to look to organic to tell us what we should be doing, what we should be talking about, what people are interested in. I mean, take TikTok is a great example of organic marketing of
Yeah.
how organic is alive. I mean, yes, it's the algorithm. The algorithm has to push it out, but people aren't, outside of brands, people aren't paying to get their content out there. They're just posting it, and sometimes, like we were saying earlier with virility, it's going to go viral and people are going to love it, and it's an organic piece of content. So for me, organic is still just as important in terms of learning what my community likes just naturally without me pushing it, with a paid media ad.
Yes, I really appreciate the idea of like the of organic indicating what you can do in your other marketing strategies. I do find oftentimes though that social and influencer, I mean, if you're lucky, social and influencer is like one team, right?
Yeah.
That are always communicating with one another. But I often see in a marketing organization, like the paid performance team is someone that's different. So the people who are running email, the people who are running website, they're all different.
Yeah.
Are there some tips that you can give to help for marketers to help them with the communication between departments? So yeah, let's say I am on the social team. I see that something is like popping off. Like
Yeah.
what is that? Is there something in place so that you can like really put more wood on the fire for that?
Yeah, for sure. So we use Slack. We love Slack. Our external media partner is on our Slack channels, and we're constantly meeting every single week to talk about what's performing well on the paid side because they have their own initiatives that they're doing with
Yeah.
creators. But then we'll say, hey, this post organically did really well. We're going to send it to you. And they're like, yeah, send it to us. We'll go ahead and put some spend behind it. So it's
Okay.
just either having a weekly touch base or being in a Slack channel and just having constant communication. Because, yeah, I totally agree. Like at any company I've ever worked for, all the departments have been kind of disconnected from one another.
Yeah.
And there is that drop in communications. But yeah, I've definitely found that the Slack channel and the weekly touch bases have been really helpful and really instrumental in terms of us seeing growth through paid and then also continuing to use the organic as like a testing ground.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think that's really great advice to have, like, consistent communication between departments and, like, having something of that whether you have something to talk about or not on, like, a weekly meeting. I would imagine we do because all
Right.
marketers have something to say. We've all got opinions. We've been in the meetings. We've been in the meetings between
We
engineering and marketing.
Oof.
Marketing.
Yes. Yes.
No offense to my engineer friends who could be potentially listening, probably not, but just in case. But I mean, to your point, I think, we've solved it. Organic is definitely not dead. It's
Yeah.
just maybe not being utilized in the most effective way possible to amplify your other social strategies, but also your marketing strategies as well. And having consistent communication between departments can be incredibly helpful to kind of
Yeah.
bridge that gap, right?
Yeah.
Now, I so you've got a piece of content that's popping off, but I'd love to hear a little bit about, like, the content creation process for you. Is it a calendar that you guys are creating based on, like, overarching themes as far as, like, content creation? Give me a little peek behind the curtain there.
Yeah. So we plan content about 5 to 6 weeks out. We get together. So my influencer team, my social team, myself, we sit in a room. Oh, my creative team, my graphic designers will sit in
Yeah,
a room for an hour and we'll be like, okay, June is coming up. What are some trending topics that we think are going to, we should be leading into? And then I'll have my style director. What are pieces that we're going to see people wearing a lot of? What are the color schemes that,
yeah.
we should be leaning into? So we meet for, like I said, like we meet for about an hour. And then my social media manager, she's incredible. She'll go back. We kind of do like a brain dump because I'm like, there's no bad ideas. Like everyone just throw out
Put
what
it
everyone
all there.
thinks. Put it all on a piece of paper.
Spaghetti on the wall.
Yes. Girl, you are hungry. I
I
can
know.
either I can either eat you something.
I should have eaten something beforehand. But you can tell my moods by my analogies, they're very consistent.
So you want Italian, you want spaghetti.
Exactly. Well, that's embarrassing.
I will order for me too. I'm starving right now. But so no, yeah, so we'll just like brain dump everything and then I'm like, hey, I trust you. Go ahead and pick out, like, for us, we're posting 3 times a day on Instagram, and then we have stories that we're doing 3 days a week. We post in stories and then like our reshares and things like that. So I'm like, go ahead and pick out some topics, go ahead and pick out some of these themes that you think would do well on social. And then she'll start to plug in the calendar. Like we're gonna do, 30 reels, we're going to do 12 flat lays, we're going to do 10 carousels. So she kind of starts to break it out. And then what we do too is just look for inspo, right? Because we're just like,
Yeah.
we're all on social all day. There's things that kind of trigger us. We're like, oh, we love this. What if we did this with like a twist on that?
Yes.
So we also have an Instagram channel message thread that we're all in, that we just send each other inspo like all day, like, hey, I saw this is kind of cool, do we think we can do something like this? So then we'll pull from that and she kind of plugs it in, and then from there, we are really leaning in heavily to content creators right now.
Yeah.
um, so we partner with about 40 to 50 content creators a month, and they're just creating content for a branded channel, and they're doing reels and stories. And the beauty of our program is that we're really letting the creator, like, of course, we're briefing them, but we're giving them carte blanche, right? We're saying, like, we love this about who you are on your
Yeah.
feeds and your aesthetic. Just create something that feels natural to you. So we
Yeah.
don't really give them too many parameters besides like color scheme that we're looking for. But other than that, it's the creator's world. So we just kind of let them create what feels right to them. And, we're lucky to work with them. We post our feed right now is, I would say, probably 80% creator content.
So, it correct me if I'm wrong, did you say you guys post 3 times a day
We post
on
3 times
Instagram?
a day on Instagram. Yeah.
That is
Okay. Oh my
insane.
God.
It
Wait a
sounds
minute.
insane.
I have some tea. So our competitors, who I will not mention, they're posting upwards of 10 to 15 times a day. 10 to 15 times a day.
That is well, that's an enormous amount of
Bananas.
content. As a former director of content and knowing exactly what it takes to like
Yes.
create and post like that social stuff, I can see how you guys would want to leverage creators for like such a massive
Oh my
that's
gosh.
a massive amount of content that gets posted out. And you're talking about planning 6 weeks in advance. I can't do fast math, but the number is high, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's high. And the thing is too is like we stagger it out. So we'll have like one set of creators kind of batch the first 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks later, the next set of creators batch, also because we're fast fashion. So our styles move so quickly. So in
yeah,
order to try and push out the most relevant, styles and items, we try and break it up. But yeah, for us, it's been working really well. It's driven up our
yeah,
engagement, and our community is really resonating with our new direction. We're doing a lot more lifestyle stuff and more
yeah.
aspirational pieces of content on Instagram. And, for our TikTok, so right now we are maintaining, because I have some exciting news. I hope I can share right now some exciting news.
Love it.
So
You heard
we
it here first.
You heard it here first, definitely. So we are building out the Rainbow Studios content creator studio. So basically,
Love
it's
it.
going to be a 4,500 square foot creator studio in downtown Brooklyn at one of our Rainbow locations. And we're going to be inviting creators in to make content. We're going to be hosting creator events, influencer events, stylist events with our style director. People can come in and she'll style them for if they're going on vacation or, so it's
Yeah.
educational things on how to dress for your body type. So we're really leaning into building a community of influencers, creators that we can then leverage on our social channels, on our website, and just have that overall experience kind of tie in together.
Oh my god, that's amazing. And what a fantastic idea. Now I'm thinking from a social media I've got my social media hat on. I'm
Yes,
like,
you do.
think of all the behind the scenes that you
I
can
know.
do
Yup.
with that studio. That's amazing.
And that's what our TikTok is going to be dedicated to. So right
Yeah.
now we're just maintaining until the studio, which has been a labor of love for 6 months, until the studio is live in 3 weeks. So in June. So I'm super excited. And
I
then
can't
it's
wait.
going to be just like all the behind, like you said, like all the behind the scenes, we're going to
Yeah.
get to lean into funny, goofy content like us in marketing meetings, just like really show our brand personality, really also to lean into, New York culture. We're a New York based company.
Yeah.
So, we're going to use that to leverage like the city streets and do on the street interviews about fashion. Like it's just going to be such an entertainment channel for us. It's nothing like you've ever seen from our brand before. So I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. And my team is
I
so excited.
That's such a great idea because I think oftentimes as a brand, like there's as a brand manager, right? You have to figure out how can I need to personify this brand. Like
Yeah.
it's not just a name.
Right.
And obviously your products, but there's like we're a feeling, right? And
Yeah.
that's really tough. So what a great fascinating idea. I also am a big fan of behind the scenes stuff, especially like behind the scenes of like social, because
Yes.
the end game, I'm like, how do they even do that? So
Yeah.
fascinating to me. I
'Cause
love it.
people don't know what it takes. They think it's,
No.
that, and honestly, like, unless you're in it, you don't know, right? And that's okay, but to your point, like, being able to see what goes into even just the smallest little flat lay photo shoot, takes, like, 2, 3 hours. You gotta do the lighting, you gotta do the pinning, you gotta do, I mean, it's crazy.
Oh
So
my
just
gosh.
so people can, like, get an understanding of, like, what it is we do, and also make them a part of that story. Like,
Yeah, bring them in.
I've always been such a big fan of like making people part of the brand and giving them a voice, like giving our customers a voice. So we're going
Yeah.
to also use that channel to get feedback about, what collection should we launch? Do you like this design? Blah, 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 blah. So yeah, oh my gosh, it's going to be incredible. I'm so excited. I'm so
Yeah,
excited.
and what you just said about bringing them in and making them feel like they're part of a brand is I think like the advantage or how like social media has really evolved over the years, like you're leveraging this tool to be more than just posting about the brand, right? Like you're breaking the fourth wall. I think that's what it is, right? You're
Yep.
breaking the fourth wall and bringing them in. And I think it's such a clever way to leverage social media for your brand. So anybody listening, like
Do
buckle up,
it.
buttercup. Yes, exactly. Buckle
Do
up
it.
and do it. Throw spaghetti on the wall, make Italian food. Just
Order
kidding.
Uber Eats.
Order Uber Eats, the whole 9 yards. Well, I thank you so much for your time. I've got one final question for you,
Do it.
okay?
Let's do it.
If you knew then what you know now, what's the marketing advice that you give to yourself?
You can't know everything, and that is okay. You just can't. And
Love that.
I used to, when I first started out my career, I was so hard on myself and I felt almost, well, I'm a big Brene Brown like fan and she talks about like shame, right? And I would have such shame
Yeah,
about asking for help because I'm like, I should know this. But how are you supposed to know what you don't know until you know it, right? You learn
exactly.
by asking questions and being okay to be vulnerable and be the person that raises their hand in the room. So, it took me a long time to get to that point where even now I'm like, I don't know everything. Like, do you know the thing? Can you tell me the thing? You know? So, it's just about being okay to be vulnerable in your career. And like I said, just asking the questions, knowing that the industry just changes so quickly. Just ask the question. It's okay.
Yeah.
You can teach someone something and someone can teach you something. And that's what I love. I love that we're just all just learning together.
Yeah, and I think if you don't ask the question, you'll never learn.
Yeah. Or if you
And
don't Google the question.
or you don't Google the question. But I also like the idea of being vulnerable enough to ask that I
Yeah.
think there's so much. This is going to be a whole other podcast episode, but
Mhm.
there's a psychological safety that needs to be
Yes.
there so that you feel vulnerable enough to say, like, ooh, I don't know this,
Yeah.
And I think the higher up you go, I also feel this very much so as a parent. Like, you're the one that's in charge of this. You should know all the things. But
Right.
like,
But you
yeah,
can't.
we can all learn from one another. There's a lot of
Totally.
things that I just don't know that, I was really reliant on my team to keep me apprised of. And I was never afraid of like, what, especially with TikTok, I was like, what does that mean? Our feeds are very different. Have you seen
Totally.
this? Have you seen the dancing priests? Very different feeds. Well, thank you so much. I
You're
love this, like,
welcome.
that you left us with this last bit of advice because I think it's gonna be helpful for anybody that's listening. I've
Oh.
absolutely enjoyed our conversation as
Thank you
I knew that
so
I
much.
would.
Thank you. You're the
So
best.
thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much. This was amazing.
Right, bye. So much fun chatting with Shayna about social media strategy. Obviously, we can definitely go down a rabbit hole. She's just a ton of fun. I do have some key takeaways for you. My first key takeaway is that when it comes to brand marketing on social media, it's important to be selective as to where you're going to show up because that should be based on where your consumers are. Some common mistakes that brands make include not posting enough, but also conversely, overposting. The one that I think is the most important or the most biggest mistake, that's probably not the best way to say it, but you get what I'm saying, is not having a different strategy for each of the platforms. It's important to have just kind of a solid strategy for each platform tailored to the type of content that performs well for each. So, for example, Instagram content can be aesthetically pleasing and highlight the brand's style, while TikTok content can be a little bit more fun, entertaining, and showcase the brand's personality. Brands should really just kind of work on experimenting and having fun with their content to truly connect with their audience on social media. Key takeaway number two, focus on consistency in social media, right? And it's consistency in presence and not just in posting, right? Whatever you're going to do, you have to be consistent across all mediums because that's going to be your brand experience. The grid on Instagram for example, is a valuable tool. Well, it can be a valuable tool for creating a kind of that cohesive and intentional brand aesthetic, while you can use TikTok to be a little bit more raw and informal. But the underlying message of your brand is the same. It's really important to activate all of your efforts at 100% and not just focus on one aspect of marketing. So, the elements of kind of the brand's marketing matrix, if you will, include social media, its website, experiential marketing, and influencer collaborations. There are obviously more, but those are just a few. And what we need to do is really marry them all together to create the consistency that we're talking about, right? It's not like variety, it's consistency. Number three, success on social media should be measured on a funnel approach. And when I talk about the funnel, I'm talking about the marketing funnel, traditional awareness, consideration, and action, right? So you're going to want to be strategic with what and how you're posting based on where you're aiming at, honestly, in the funnel. I'm here to also say that organic social media is not dead, but the way people interact with it has definitely changed. It's important to have a strong organic strategy that can be supported by a strong paid strategy. And that communication between departments is going to be really key in achieving success. Consistent communication, weekly meetings, and using organic as kind of a testing ground can all be helpful for growing success on social media. So you have to be able to leverage organic with a paid strategy to work those people who are your followers, your community, down that marketing funnel. I'd love to hear what nuggets of insights you walked away with from today's episode. So definitely be sure to subscribe and share in all the platforms. We're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen to podcasts. A special thank you to my podcast producers, Content Allies. You can check out the episode page to learn a little bit more about Shayna, and you can also get a hold of me on LinkedIn. You can find me at Katya Allison. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. Until next time, may the conversation flow, the laughter linger, and the outlook remain optimistic but grounded in reality. This is Katya signing off.